I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Chris Langiza, and I am the Senior Director of Business Development at Procore. Really excited to have what I think is going to be an extremely engaging panel today around innovation and entrepreneurship and driving those types of cultures inside of companies, inside of the AEC industry. This is incredibly important as we are an industry that is really prime for change and innovation. And there's a lot of great ways that we can drive it. And there's no better way to start that than starting inside of your own company. So I wanted to make a couple of quick announcements before I introduce our panelists today. First of all, we love questions. I love questions as a moderator. So please don't hesitate to put those questions into the Q&A box. You will see two tabs. One of them is called chat. That is a public chat function for you to chat with the other colleagues that are inside of the session. But we also have that Q&A area. If you go ahead and post your questions in there, I will do my darndest as the moderator to make sure we get to absolutely as many of those as possible throughout today's session. And I'll go ahead and post the answers to those as well. Without further ado, I want to start by introducing some of our panelists today. So I'm excited to be joined by Mark, Jean-Francois, Raja, and Johan. And I'm going to let each one of them do a little bit of their own introduction about themselves, the companies, where they're located, and really what it is that they're most proud of around what their company has done around innovation and entrepreneurship. So Mark, I will go ahead and start it off with you. Mark, not sure if your video is off and your audio is not coming back on. If you want to test that, we'll go ahead and move to Jean-Francois, and we'll come back to you.
Yes, perfect. Hello. Hello, my name is Jean-Francois. So I'm an innovation manager, R&D special projects at Pomerleau. I'm based in Montreal. Pomerleau is a general contractor with 4,000 employees, and offices across Canada. We're currently working on around 200 active projects, so construction projects. Our expertise is building, infrastructure, civil works. So I've been working for Pomerleau since 2012. I'm currently in charge of the software development inside the innovation department. So the innovation team at Pomerleau is around 60% across Canada, and 10 software developers in the teams. And I will say for the thing that I'm most proud of on the innovation side in my company, I would say if I need to choose something, I would say that I'm since we're in nomination in the Digitalization Strategy Award category, I would say the delivery equipment tool that we developed to give the possibility to coordinate 3D delivery of equipment. And I would say also all the culture that was developed, the innovation culture developed at Pomerleau.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jean-Francois. Mark, great to see you were able to get back in and join us. I'm going to go back to you and let you introduce yourself as well. We can see you. All right, we'll come back to Mark one more time. Raja, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. Raja Gawi here. I'm a director at Suffolk Tech, Suffolk Construction's corporate venture capital arm. Suffolk is a general contractor headquartered in Boston. We are a $4 billion company. We specialize in big complex buildings. Our median project is probably a $150 million concrete high-rise in dense urban environments. We have offices across the U.S., Boston, New York, Miami, Dallas, LA, and SF, and many other cities as well. I joined Suffolk 2.5 years ago after a career at McKinsey, where I specialized in private equity M&A work, as well as advanced analytics, where I spent some time with Quantum Black, McKinsey's AI and ML arm. And when I joined Suffolk, I joined an associate partner that I had worked with, Jitki Chin, who's our chief data innovation officer right now, where she was looking to set up the data team at Suffolk. Both my parents are architects. My grandfather used to run a contracting business in the Middle East. And I was excited to see what we can do with the new sort of data that is now fully digitized, or increasingly digitized rather, in construction. So when I joined Suffolk, I worked with the data science team and the data engineering team. Quickly realized that while we do have interesting data and we're continuing to build on it, there's a lot of innovation happening in the field. We have a team of 7 collab directors across our national offices who are dedicated to piloting projects, seeing what works and what doesn't, what scales and what doesn't, and communicating that feedback to us sort of on the data and innovation side. So when I started, my role was first working with the data science and data engineering team, later working more closely with the innovation, the collab teams as well, to see sort of what technology is out there, what should we do in-house versus what should we partner with external partners on. And that quickly led us to set up our corporate venture capital practice. There's a lot of new founders coming into the industry, a lot of very exciting talent, a lot of venture capital money as well. And because of that infrastructure of both technical expertise in-house and a dedicated team, using our sites as an operational test bed with over 50 pilots across over 100 sites now. Do we have a differentiated insight into technology in the space? Can we be good thought partners and development partners? And if so, why not have skin in the game and invest? So we started investment a year and a half ago now, in early 2019. We've invested in 7 companies over the last year and a half, which has been a pretty good pace for us. And our mission is to invest in anything and everything that brings capital efficiency to the built environment. Let's all come together and build better, faster, cheaper, and safer. Happy to elaborate more later, but that's the gist of it.
Absolutely. I'm going to go and I'm going to try with Mark one more time. How we doing, Mark? We get that figured out?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good. Okay. Perfect.
Jeez. Sorry, guys. My apologies. All right. So we'll try this again. My name is Mark Cici. These guys are new to me. I'm sure many people in the Kanban forum know my name. I am principal and the director of design technology at HOK. I imagine we're somewhere, I believe, around 2,000 employees globally in 24-ish, 25-ish offices. Big firm. I guess, so I'm actually now, I can say the majority of the time due to COVID based in Toronto. Previously, I was kind of everywhere. Although, given the state of technology, we're now, I think probably everyone on this call is able to be everywhere now at all times, right? So there's a massive benefit there. I'd say, Chris, in regards to kind of one of my kind of most favored innovations, I guess, at the company, there's 2 things that really kind of come to mind. One is kind of a vague concept, as Raja kind of just spoke to, which is the ability to develop very strategic partnerships with certain companies overall to understand that internally we have certain skill sets that are geared and applied towards innovation as they relate to the delivery of projects, but then we're not software developers. That's not our primary business. So we know, when to strategically partner. So I would say that maybe that's not an innovation of itself, but it's an important distinction to understand. And then the second one I would say that is more applied is some of the work we've done around the concept of allowing users to coordinate with geospatial and data systems across all elements of a project. So giving people the ability to work with unlocked, let's call them platforms, to be able to collaborate digitally over geometry and data metrics that relate to that geometry, so that everyone involved in that process, whether you're an architectural technician that understands how BIM works, or you're the end user that is going to occupy the building, you all kind of have an even distributed platform that you can integrate and collaborate in that is not locked to any vendor-like system. So,
awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Mark. Johan, want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Can you hear us, Johan? All All right. It sounds like Johan might be having a little bit of a technical difficulty getting connected there with the audio as well. I'll come back to him and give him an opportunity to introduce himself once he gets that straightened out. So what I really wanted to do is I wanted to start off the conversation on, why is internal innovation? So let's talk about just inside of our companies. Internal innovation and entrepreneurship so important to each of your companies. Jean-Francois, I'm going to start with you because your team seems to have taken a very, very hands-on approach to building your own technology and to really driving innovation internally. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think the reason why the internal innovation is important, at least for Pomerleau, is because innovation is not only a matter of getting the latest tools, but we need really to understand the needs of the different business units so that we can find and integrate the best tools and best processes, and sometimes, customize the solution, develop something internally. And I think that internal innovation is the best way to understand those needs and be sure that we can do like a constant follow-up and see if the solution is the best option, the best solution. So on our side, in the innovation team, we started like pretty soon to develop our own tech internally. So since the creation, in fact, of the department in 2012. So the goal of the innovation department is like to integrate, develop innovative solution. So a big part of our job, of course, is to integrate those BIM VDC process at Pomerleau, like the creation of 3D models for coordination, the creation of 4D simulation, quantity takeoff from models, but also all the technology linked to those processes, like the use of laser scanner, drones, 360 photos, and 3D coordination tools, construction management tools. So all that stuff, but we found out like pretty soon that we need to customize our own tools, processes, so that we can make our job more efficient, because sometimes the tools on the market might not answer all the needs that we have, might be a bit expensive sometimes, depends of the software that we're looking at. And we started, let's say the first development were mainly around Revit, Navisworks, the tool that we use like daily at Pomerleau. So we developed some tools to help during the modelization and coordination process. And since then, the innovation team has grown fast in the past few years. So there was an increase in the number of ideas that were brought by the team, an increase in the need of new development. So at some point, we needed to hire more software developer. So this is why now we're like around 10 software developer trying to manage and to create those tools internally.
Chris, we lost you.
There's no sound there, Chris.
How about now?
Now we're good.
Hello?
Yes.
All right. I don't know what happened there. Just muted me on its own. So I think what's really important to understand there, maybe Johan's having the same problem, is that, there are things out there on the market, you mentioned, Jean-Francois, that are very good, but they don't necessarily fit the needs that you have. And so putting your own spin on each one of those is very important to support your business processes. Now, Mark, one of the things that I found interesting as we were prepping for this call was you took a little bit different approach, which is taking some technology that was maybe not built for our industry and applying it to our industry because it was really good at what it did. Can you talk to me a little bit more about maybe some of the things that you're doing to connect some of those gaming tools to the AEC industry so we can, be a little more innovative there?
Sure. So maybe what I'll do as a precursor to that is to kind of say that absolutely 100%. We support the same sort of position and are traveling down the same road that Jean-Francois and Pomerleau are in terms of looking at augmenting existing tools. When we come to kind of the game development side of things, absolutely, you're right, Chris. As I'm sure a lot of firms are starting to realize, as are construction firms, is that these are great platforms to work within, great development platforms that have a lot of flexibility that were originally not intended to be built for our use case. But what we like to do is we like to, first of all, work with platforms that are flexible and are built on an open standard, where the vendor is not consistently trying to lock you in. So, the reason that we chose specifically to work with Epic Games is because of that fact. So they're willing to support industry standards like IFC, open geometry standards. They give their tools away for free, and so for us, it was kind of an ideal platform to work on top of and try and understand, because some of the systems that we're developing are actually ways of streaming the data directly into a gaming engine, so that the design can be realized on the fly, right? So as you're in a client meeting, as you're in a construction meeting, and you're trying to understand these things, when you think of what a game engine has to offer, you could literally build an entire system inside of that shell. And so you could do things like conflict coordination, or conflict detection, like you would maybe do with Solibri, or, Jean-Francois mentioned Navisworks. All of these things can be seen in real time. And yeah, can you do this with real-time renderers? Absolutely. You could use things like V-Ray RT or Maxwell Fire to do this. But what the gaming engines offer you is the ability to customize to a very high degree your entire pipeline, so that you can separate your production in one sense and then your visualization in another, and you get all these fantastic tools to work with it. You can even build conceptual design platforms within the system itself as well. So this is where we see the opportunity for us to be able to work with something that is flexible and as creative as we approach the design process.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. And I think that's a great perspective. It's like the flexibility that you're looking for is there in other solutions, and you're able to apply, the true value of the knowledge that you have around the process to those technologies. And I think that is a perfect lead in to maybe my next question is, what is the difference between innovation and technology, right? Well, we always seem to hear those things very closely tied to each other, and they don't necessarily have to be, right? And what I look at, Mark, is your application of an existing technology into a new industry in a way that it hasn't been used for is very, very innovative. And it doesn't always have to be that you have to go build a new software or you have to build a new piece of hardware. It can be finding new ways and new processes to be able to do that. I wanted to kind of open that question, and Raja, I don't know if you want to chime in here, but you want to touch a little bit on your ideas of what's different between innovation and technology?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So what I can tell you is at Suffolk, we view there's different flavors of innovation, right? So there's process innovation, and we have a dedicated process innovation team, the pit crew is what we call them. And they are looking at better ways, and new processes to one of their bigger projects right now is to surface requests for information, RFIs, earlier and earlier in the process of building, so you can resolve most, if not all of them, before you start building. And that way you avoid a lot of costly changes during the construction phase. You align on what potential costs are actually going to look like before you start building, and you just save the guys and girls in the field a lot of time and energy trying to resolve these issues that were not resolved early on. So that's a classic example of pure process innovation. You can use technology to back it. You can potentially use technology later on to automate more and more of how you surface those issues and how you collect the responses and how you resolve them. But you don't need technology to make sure that everybody gets in the room earlier and earlier, is looking at the same set of documents, and communicate more effectively. Technological innovation, on the other end, we view on a continuum, right? So let's first start to move away from paper and digitize our data. And Procore, I don't need to tell you, Chris, but you guys kind of led the charge on that. Let's get rid of that file cabinet on site and just digitize it, be able to then start to analyze that data, integrate other data sources in. So now that we're starting to have data, technological innovation is how do we do more with this data? So one example is we build our own business intelligence dashboards to tailor them to the way we view and manage sites. So our data and IT teams spend a lot of time building different dashboards for different projects, also different functions, and different levels of seniority to help people have access to the information they need to make decisions and do their job more efficiently. Now that you have that data, you have it clean, you have it presentable and accessible, what more can you do with it? So maybe you can analyze it, maybe you can start to do some prediction, some optimization. We are investors and partners with SmartVid, for example, where we share with them a lot of our safety data, and they help us predict the likelihood of an incident on site a week beforehand. So if you zoom out, now you have a ranked list of projects with a risk score against each and every one of them. So it's regional safety managers can go and say, here are the 5 I need to spend the most attention on this week. I'm going to send extra resources there. I'm going to do a safety stand down. So that's another example of technological innovation, right? But it's all backed with processes, right? You need to act on that insight. You need to act on that data. And that's where you can have process innovation without technology. It's hard to have technological innovation without the right process to back it.
I just want to add, so Chris, to just say like an answer to that, I would say is technology is the tool, innovation is the problem that you need to solve, or it's the idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, great way to distill that down into a few words. I agree with you. I mean, you need both of them. They're both equally important, but it definitely, the innovation won't happen unless there's true pain and a problem to actually solve. Mm-hmm. I think, Johan, you back? Can you hear us now? Maybe?
Yes, I'm back. Some connection problems. Thanks, Chris.
No worries. We're glad to have you. I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about yourself and your role at Hatch.
Yes, my name is Johan Palm. I'm the Global Director for Engineering Management. But up to recently, for the last 3 years, I've managed a program of initiatives within Hatch. Hatch is about 10,000 people. Big company, headquarters in Canada, and I led up to recently a team called Visual Project Delivery with about more than 100 developers, an innovative team developing innovative solutions for our company and for our clients. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Johan. I'm going to give you a question to get you caught up because everybody else has had a good amount of time to talk here. So I wanted to ask you, when we were talking previously, leading up to this, getting prep for this call, you talked a lot about the role that leadership plays and that culture plays in innovation. You said you were leading a team of 100 people working on development and innovation and technology. That obviously requires some pretty big buy-in from leadership and a culture within inside of your company to be able to invest in that. Care to share a bit more about that?
Lost him again.
Yeah, Chris, seems like I do have some connection issues, but I hope you can hear me. Unfortunately, 20 years ago when I joined the company, I joined the company because of the manifesto that they have, and in the manifesto it clearly indicates that innovate.
Yep, we may have lost him. All right. Well, we'll come back to him. Raja, I'll come to you because I have a history with Suffolk and I know a little bit about the company. So it starts at the top there, right? Leadership within inside of your company is extremely invested in innovation and in technology. I mean, you guys have your own fund. That doesn't start from nowhere. Somebody has to make that. Talk to me a little bit about that. Maybe the relationship that you have with the leadership in the company, how that's propagated down, and also some of the things that you're doing to drive that innovation inside of Suffolk.
Yeah, I'm very happy to. So Suffolk unique for a company, a general contractor of our size, is that we are a sort of single founder, CEO, chairman, John Fish, who started the company about 40 years ago and continues to lead it. And he is a huge proponent of technology and innovation and pushing the envelope forward and how we can improve the way we build. So we do have support from the very top. And then if you go to sort of John -1, we have a very impressive bench of operational leaders and functional leaders who are also very excited to use technology to push the envelope forward. And then as you go down, we've done a really good job at Suffolk recruiting very talented individuals who are also very excited about doing things differently. So from the bottoms up, we do have a network of innovation champions across our regions that we can tap to say, here's a new tool, do you want to try it? What are some of the pain points that you're experiencing that you think technology can solve? So we can bubble up a lot of those pain points and ideas. And between having a good pulse on the field and what the industry needs and having that top-down support, we're able to do a lot of things that otherwise would take much, much longer to just get the buy-in to do.
Awesome.
So an example
Go ahead,
of that,
Mark. I was going to come to you. Oh,
No, sorry, Raja. I don't mean to cut you off. If you want to continue.
No worries. Just one latest example is our inaugural sort of mini accelerator program we're calling Boost. So we have our venture fund, we have the operational testbed through the collabs. We're looking at ways to partner with startups that are even earlier stage, that might not be ready for an investment from us or are at just that cusp of when a pilot is useful. So we launched Boost, where we sent out a call for applications and said, founders in the space, come to us with one well-defined problem that we can spend about a month working together on to solve. We received an overwhelming number of applications. We're currently in the midst of reviewing them, and we're hoping to announce the finalists soon. But this is a sort of a classic example of top-down leadership sort of wanted to engage with an even broader portion of the ecosystem. Our operational guys were super excited to be partners with those startups. So now we have the top-down support to launch the program. We have all the folks on the field who are willing to partner with our final 5 and work with them. And we're pretty excited about what the next month or so are going to look like for the program.
So, Chris, I just want to take that one too, because I'm sure there are a lot of people kind of listening that are part of either large, medium, whatever, that are in professional service side of the equation. And I know having worked at places in the past where the talk of innovation is present, but the action isn't necessarily always there to back it up. To your point, it all 100% starts at a leadership level. What I wanted to say was what's unique about our firm in a sense is the fact that I guess I would consider myself leadership now that I'm a principal. As some of my colleagues in New York, a couple of my colleagues in New York, we lead by example. Like we are guys that do this stuff every day. Jean-Francois, very much like yourself, where and the firm as a whole supports us. I want to say that I think that's what's really important here is that true belief needs to come not just from a couple of people doing some really amazing innovative things, but you need collectively, there needs to be trust at a leadership level and a belief that what you're working on actually has value to the firm and will make a difference. And I will say that I think that's a massive bonus, and it's something that actually does legitimately happen. I've worked in places where that isn't the case, where what happens is things get cash strapped and they get stripped down, and then the things don't make it to the finish line. When it's, I'm sure as the other people on this call can kind of attest to, is that, you ramp quite slowly, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like in the last, 5-10%, the thing just goes boom, right to the ceiling. And it's when that last little margin there is where you need that trust and that belief and the support to just make it happen. And I mean, anyone who develops software or works on innovative projects understands that. And it's just very much like the design process. Iterate, you hit it, and then it happens, right? Which is a tough thing to kind of have. So it messes with your gut a little bit when you're risk averse. So I want to say to that point is that it's absolutely 100% essential that leadership not only supports that sort of that process, but also the people that contribute to that process that sometimes may feel like they're being pressured, intensely pressured, which I guess you should feel, but that there is a positive outcome on the other end. And I think as we kind of go through that cycle more and more and more, people start to understand that that's kind of how it works, especially in a world of BIM and computation where a lot of the stuff happens like in a snap at the last second. And most of the work is on the front end, preparing and getting things set up for that result. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Mark. I mean, because construction's not risk averse at all, so we shouldn't have any of these problems. It's very interesting to think that innovation and technology. The reason that companies that are in this space grow so fast is because they iterate extremely quickly, right? And there are plenty of failures. Our industry is not used to failures. When we have failures, that means buildings fall down and budgets are blown. And so the idea of failing fast is hard to embrace. And so, like you said, Mark, getting support from leadership, and it's not just the president or the CEO or the CIO that needs to support these things. It's all those people intermingled all the way down to those who are closest to the field, that they have to be willing to try and to fail and then succeed, and then see those, as you said, that last 5% of that boost. It's like, oh, wow, this really worked, and it worked big. And I think that's a really interesting perspective is, yeah, you're going to have a bunch of misses, but then you're going to have some really, really, really big wins that are going to make up for some of those things. That's what true innovation does. It really takes us and leapfrogs us a step or two forward. I wanted to go over to Jean-Francois and ask him a little bit, a question that ties pretty closely to this, which is, what are some of the biggest challenges with embracing innovation and entrepreneurship, and kind of, I don't want to say writing your folks a blank check, but you're giving them, a right to go and change the way things are done. And specifically, y'all have developed a lot of internal tools, and you could have just worked with outside organizations. Talk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, what I see for now, that like the biggest challenge that we face currently developing our tool internally is probably like the lack of resource internally. So to be able to answer all the requests that we get, so we need to prioritize our work. But on the other end, what I see, what's the big advantage there? I think that the developing internally can give us like a better understanding of the people needs, since the innovation team, our team, is working really closely with the operation and make it easier to give support. But of course, from time to time, we use some external help, some external resource to help us when needed for projects, for software that we cannot build from scratch internally, or maybe to have like an external eye, I would say, on the problem that we maybe don't have sometimes. So we use both of the I would say internal and external resources to develop.
Now, Mark, I've always thought of HOK as extremely innovative and kind of, pushing the envelope on a lot of things that are happening in our industry. That has had to come with some challenges, right? I mean, being a firm that is very traditional in just the work that you do, people tend to not want to think outside that box. But I also think in some respects that being designers, right, that is kind of ingrained in the DNA. Has that helped at all at driving innovation at your firm?
Yeah, I think, what you find is, I mean, you made the mention of kind of like tradition, I guess, as you could say. We're certainly not talking about like classical architecture like Albertium Vitruvius, but obviously there are more kind of, let's say, conventional norms, and then there are more kind of avant-garde. So if you look at, some of the work we've done in, things like sport, for instance, right? Atlanta Hawks Stadium and some of those kind of more, and even Edmonton Oilers in Alberta. So the thing is that, even though you may have something that seemingly looks conventional, let's say a healthcare project, which every single project we do has some spot of innovation in it. And I think what's really important is, much like you would in, say, auto or aerospace, what you do, and hopefully the construction industry is catching on to this, because, farming is about to leapfrog us in innovation, which is a little bit crazy. But that aside, everything kind of borrows from the same stream, right? I mean, this is the major benefit to working at a large scale, is that, internally, I hadn't really mentioned this previously, we've got a team that is about, let's say, 75-ish people to 2,000, which is a pretty low percentage, relatively speaking. But what we're constantly working on is some of the toughest challenges, and really kind of, let's say, market segment and or complexity of building sometimes is irrelevant, because it comes back to what is the problem you're trying to solve. 9 times out of 10 or 9.5 times out of 10, the problem you're trying to solve in one specific area applies to, say, 30 other projects, right? So you kind of get the benefit of understanding, the challenge in a broader context, which I think is super valuable, and not just from the perspective of, and this is really important actually when speaking, I totally am in Jean-Francois's wheelhouse, whereas, you conceive of a solution to a problem differently when you do conceptually and design, even through construction drawings. It's another thing to make something real and build it, right? The mechanics of that, when you bring into I guess Raja as well, is the mechanics of like delivery and site constraints and things like this play a massive role. So, you may develop tools for a specific use case that needs to address both sides of that equation. And I can think of an example right now is a project I'm working on where we've got sensors in the building that are tracking the building's movement over time, right? Because structurally it needs to be monitored to ensure that nothing is collapsing, right? Mm-hmm. But what we're doing is we're trying to construct an interface that works with the BIM model that takes those sensor locations and that data. And again, Raja, to your earlier point, prepares a dashboard that is relevant to each individual that's going to look at that situation, because they all have different needs, right? So, I mean, and this is something that could then apply to any other project. I'm hoping that answers the question.
No, that's great insight for sure. Raja, I wanted to come to you because one of the challenges I've always seen, and I didn't necessarily try and deploy innovation at a multinational or a big, huge company. I was lucky enough to try and deploy innovation at an office and then at a regional contractor that I could drive to basically every job site that I was at, right? And so, Suffolk is, pretty much across all of North America. And how is that a challenge with the collabs? People are piloting and testing things in different offices. How are you able to align the efforts and maybe even take the wins and kind of spread them throughout the rest of the organization? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right that the larger and more spread out you are as an organization, the more likely you are to leave sort of offices further away from corporate out. The way we set up our innovation team is a hub and spoke model. So the hub is in corporate, and then every regional office has their own innovation sort of director, a dedicated person whose job is to coordinate with the hub, and then as the spoke, make sure that they are also sort of driving to all the local sites, talking to more or less every single person in operations and making sure that they're up to speed on the latest tech that's scaling. If it's in San Diego, sort of here's what's working in Boston. Does this fit your site? Another way around, right? Sort of, we tried this in Miami and it's great. Do you want to go and try it in SF? And that way you ensure that there's cross-pollination and innovation is not happening in regional silos, because innovation sort of only gives you its maximum value when it scales across the company. You can do something great on one side and then you turn it over, and then if it doesn't pass to the next site and the next site and the next office in the rest of the country, it was sort of good in that point of time, but you can get much more out of it. The way, again, we've been able to spread innovation and culminate it that way is by having dedicated people in regional offices who are charged with making sure that that communication is happening. The other thing we learned is that our frontline guys talk to each other a lot, especially within one region. So sometimes a solution is picked up by a project manager or project executive or superintendent. They go and see their buddy from their past project who's working down the street. They tell them about it. It just gets picked up. And that's great as well. You still need a centralized team to capture what's actually working in different spots and make sure that it's well documented and that it scales beyond those specific projects.
Yeah, it's a great point. Under my previous role, I didn't just own innovation and technology. I actually owned safety as well. And I kind of borrowed from the safety mantra of like, not one person owns safety. We all own it. Right. And I took that same mantra to innovation. I said, it is not my job to figure out how to fix every problem we have here inside of our company. It is my job to collect those ideas from you, those interesting thoughts and approaches and pain points, and then go and kind of project manage them, if you will, to make sure that we can make them work for the rest of the organization. And I think when you can get people to engage and feel that they can contribute to those innovations or those ideas, even though they don't necessarily have to do the work to deliver on them, that really starts to get the ideas flowing inside of your organization. And I find that incredibly powerful as well. Now, the next question I wanted to bring up is, we've long been addressed with getting new talent and younger talent. And, the talent gap in construction has been well documented for a long time. Now, with all this innovation and technology coming, it seems like a great opportunity to bring in some people that have some different perspectives. Now, Raja, you didn't necessarily come from construction, and now we're working in construction tech at a construction company. So I'd love to hear your perspective, but Jean-Francois and Mark also want to hear your perspective too, because I think you're grabbing people from places that traditionally aren't feeding your organizations either. Raja, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about how we think about sort of talent at Suffolk and attracting sort of top-tier talent that way. So I think it starts with the culture, which I think Mark had touched on already. You need that visionary sort of culture and vision to get people excited. What we have done at Suffolk is from the get-go, we spend a lot of time on our Career Start program, hiring sort of very excited folks for the field from top technical schools in all of our major office regions, as well as liberal arts schools. We also have an initiative right now to hire more extensively from HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. And then from the top, operationally, we've also made it a point to attract and hire some of the top operational leaders in all of our major offices. On the functions side, John and the team have also been very thoughtful in attracting top functional talent. Our chief marketing officer comes from E-Trade. Our chief financial officer was 20 years at GE. My boss was 10 years at McKinsey. And when you have excited, sort of technically sort of thoughtful folks that are coming in to the field, and when you have visionary leaders at the very top, it becomes very easy to say, like, this is a really great group of people to work with. Like, why don't you leave McKinsey or Bain or sort of your nice non-construction related job and come work with us? And that's worked for us really well. Again, you need the vision, you need the sort of top of the bench, and then you need the folks who are sort of just starting at the company to be excited. Because again, if you have the top-down vision, but you don't have anybody picking that innovation and acting on it, it's not going to go anywhere, and you need both.
Yeah, Jean-Francois, I wanted to shift over to you because you're trying to, probably compete against some software companies that's all they do to get developers and coders and things like that. How is that going, and what has been the approach on bringing some of that talent in?
Yeah, exactly. So as you said, with the creation of the innovation team, we saw like the different profiles coming at Pomerleau, so new hires. So at the beginning, it was really more construction side people going inside the innovation team. But at some point, as I talk and you said, we needed more software developers, and yes, there are a lot of competition outside. So we need to bring I would say all the advantage of the I would say the innovation team, what we can bring to them, and we create like a big structure in the innovation teams to be able to do some R&D. So I think this really talks to people when they come to the office. So we create like some task group like 10 different about talking about AI planning and different subjects like that. So from there we're we're able to do some research on different fields, and I think this really attract the people to come to the to Pomerleau, because on the other side there's like Unity trying to get those kind of talent, and we're trying to have the same kind of we'll say developer internally, because as Mark said, we're using also some game engines, so we're developing some tools with game engines. So there's pretty much like similar profiles from like Unity and all those different software companies.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, this is just like one that really hits home for me, actually, because for 10 years I feel like people have been calling me crazy, and finally now, like after a decade, people are starting to realize that I'm not crazy. Seriously, because for me it's not new. I had my own firm prior to joining HOK, and at that office I had everything, like, because I think like 10 years ago, literally, I saw the writing on the wall. Construction is so ripe for change. It's insane. Like the smell is so funky. It's crazy. And I had mechanical engineers, industrial designers, creatives, software developers. At HOK, what are we doing? Well, we've hired people from Shopify developers. We've got game developers, obviously, as speaking of what I had previously. We've got people that have knowledge in all sorts of different areas. And the idea is that, I think what perpetuates any medium, period, is the mechanics and kind of the technical aspects of things are things that are learned. Like skills are things that we can pick up. It's like a knife. You can sharpen it at any point and you can put it to work, right? It's a tool you can use. What's not, and what does not permeate every single facet of being, is creativity. That's something I think that is inherently kind of built into you. And so what we look for are not just software developers, but creative software developers, creative people that can adapt and be dynamic in a different environment, right? I think that's crucial to understand. To the point I think that Jean-Francois just made is that, 100%, it starts with a core, and the hub and spoke model, like 100%, like it works. Like that's how it works at scale, right? That's the best way to do it, right? Though that, to your question, Chris, it's also though, the young people coming out, like I'm a previous academic as well, right? So I've taught for the last 15 years at various institutions all over, whether, it's at MIT or Waterloo or, Canada, whatever, the UK, even the Architectural Association. So, like I can see firsthand that these kids that are coming out of school, the sorts of issues and things that they're grappling with, they're looking at really cool, innovative stuff. They get to work and all of a sudden people are like, well, that's a little too risky for us. We're not, we'd like to do that, but at a certain point we need to deliver a building, which is absolutely fine. So, we have to teach some of these people how to adapt and how to get both. I think the important thing is that they understand both sides of the fence. They get the experience that allows them to understand how to make something, but then they can actually apply the creative knowledge that they have and the new ideas, because the industry's got to change. It's ripe for change. A lot of us on this call know this. We're doing something about it. Even sometimes working together, because I work with Pomerleau on certain projects. So I've seen some of your work, Jean-Francois. And so the important thing is that, because it's very easy for young people with talent and creativity to say, I'm done with this. I'm not fighting the system anymore. I think I'm just going to go and be a game developer or something like that and leave construction or architect AEC. And I think what people should understand is that it is changing. We are proof of the fact that the industry will change. It's going to change. And we're rapidly pushing this technology and this innovation downstream and in the line to do that. So I guess that's really, I'm not crazy.
I don't think you're crazy. Go ahead, Roger.
I don't think you're crazy either, Mark. But to add to what you just said, that the industry is changing, if I take my Suffolk hat off and put my venture hat on, there's massive opportunity for impact. And that's really what excites a lot of top talent. So between when we started on our venture effort a year and a half ago and now, I see sort of more experienced entrepreneurs leaving startups that have raised sort of hundreds of millions of dollars doing sort of data infrastructure, cloud computing, sort of some of the more sort of traditional tech, and starting startups and venture-backed companies in construction, because they recognize that this is a $1.3 trillion industry in the US alone, declining productivity year over year since the 1960s. And population continues to grow. I mean, we need to house people. Something's got to give. And even if you're not able to sort of right now in this moment attract all the top talent you need for your AEC company, a lot of talent is still pulling into the industry at large, to these startups who later get acquired. And I think that, well, I hope that in sort of 5 to 10 years, we fast forward and now we have this fresh pool of talent who's very excited and dedicated to the industry, who got attracted to it because of this sort of venture frenzy happening right now. All these startups getting founded, funded, scaled, and hopefully exited more and more soon.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a net positive for all of us here.
I think it's interesting, Raja, you said it before, your family was architects, right? And we're seeing this wave of people that went to college, maybe learned how to be software engineers or business majors, who their parents or their uncle or their grandparents were in the industry, and they've gone and they've had success at these technology companies, and they're going, hey, you know what? I remember walking that job site with my granddad or whatever. I'm trying to solve this problem. Or I used to sit at my uncle's drafting table as he was, drawing up houses. Like, I loved that. And so they're bringing these two things together because they never thought that was going to work out. But now they're bringing all the things that they've learned. And we see a lot of that in our industry, which I think is amazing. And,
totally
for me personally, I think I was like kind of like a circumstance of luck a little bit about when I came into the industry. I was a kid that was captain in the computer science team in high school. I loved technology, but that didn't seem like something that I was going to do. So I went into construction, talk about the other end of the spectrum. But I couldn't let it go with the fact that there was just going to need to be a better way. And that was when like BIM was kind of starting to make a little headway. And I was like, why aren't we doing this everywhere in construction? It doesn't make any sense to me. And maybe I was just thick-headed enough to not let it go. And so it kind of worked out for me. One of the questions that came in from the audience, and I think would be a great kind of closing question for us, is like, how do you measure the value or the success of these innovations? Because everybody always wants to talk about ROI, right? What's the return on investment, right? Drives me insane sometimes, but how do you measure them? Is it strictly ROI? Is it the impact that it's happening? Is it even potentially like employee engagement? We'd love to hear kind of each of you give me a minute or two on what you think on this. I'll start with you, Mark, and then we'll go to Raja and then Jean-François. Okay?
Yeah, sure. So, okay, again, definitely happy to take that one actually, because we do that quantitatively and qualitatively. Some things have metrics that you can define, whether it's number of working hours. We can literally measure by like automating certain things, developing software to do something that traditionally, let's say in this case, a human might do, but it's actually, there is no value there in that human doing that task. So we write software to do that for us, and we can quantify the number of hours that person spent. That was done in 30 seconds as opposed to like a day or something like that. So that's one way of doing it. And we do that all the time. And I think all of us have mentioned, we use various tools like Power BI, Tableau, whatever it is, to measure databases, that sort of thing, even graph databases. So that's one way. The other, the harder one, obviously, is the qualitative one, because it's in some ways it's kind of immeasurable. But what you start to see is that you start to see higher quality work. So automating a certain task gives that person a day back to work on design, or gives that person a day back to work on a detail, which saves time down the line in construction, right? Because there's not missing information. So we measure it both ways. I guess that's really the best answer I can give.
Yeah, I totally agree with Mark. It's really about sort of defining what success looks like.
Yeah.
If success is you're saving X number of hours for this person so they can go and do other things, then you define that, you measure it, and you report against it. If success is saving dollars, if it's surfacing issues, you need to have those sort of key success metrics that you're measuring against. ROI is sort of how people talk about it, like how much dollars did you save for dollars spent. And that's sort of a useful metric if you're trying to compare across different solutions. But really the value is like, did it work? Did it do what it said it's going to do? Did it save me time so I can do other things? And if you sort of take it a step below ROI, that's when the conversation becomes much more interesting, because you can always go and say, oh, I saved you like however many hours and you charge this much per hour, so this is how much like dollars I saved. It's like, no, that's not touching the bottom line. You're just giving me more time now to do other things because we're all short-staffed, and that's an industry problem. The other sort of angle to it is, again, sort of like what Mark says, the qualitative one, like, are people happy with these solutions? And what we do is we run massive surveys every quarter to just say, like, what are you excited about? What's working? What's not working? And that also gives you a sense of gaps. And oftentimes, I think in our last survey, 50% of the problems people vocalize were ones that we have solutions for. It just hasn't trickled down yet. Mm-hmm. So these sort of qualitative measurement processes can help you surface a lot of issues that just sort of measuring ROI doesn't. And then the last point is, because we're investment arm as well, my metric is IRR, right? Like, here's how much you invested, here's how much it made back. And having that kind of financial bar also really helps from an investment perspective.
Jean-Francois?
Yeah, to add to that, I would say some of the development that we do are pretty easy to calculate. That yes, there's a big ROI behind them, but some others maybe just like applying a process like 3D coordination. Sometimes it's difficult, like, to know, does this we know that it helped in the end, but it's difficult, like, to quantify, like, how much money we save using 3D coordination. But for example, we develop a tools that I found just at the beginning of the panel. It's a tool that we developed to do coordination, but about like delivery of equipment on site. And that was pretty clear at the beginning that there was a big issue behind that, because there was a lot of meetings trying to see what's the best path on the site, and there was like I don't know, 10 person around the table trying to decide. And like, there were the mechanical guy, the structural guy, the architect, all the subtrade, talking about what's the best path to delivering this equipment, and creating that tools. And the problem also, it was not that there was this meeting and they were talking about it, but the problem was also that after the meeting, there was someone trying to see, does it work? And trying just to see on the drawing and the models, see if it works. So with the tool that we developed, they were able to use directly the models in 3D during this meeting. Less people around the table were able directly to say, yeah, that worked, that doesn't work. And we were able to save a lot of, try and get back to other stuff. So that was really a good involvement inside this process. So, but some others is more difficult sometimes to find out, like, the ROI behind it. But some are pretty easy to do.
Yeah. Jean-Francois, I totally agree. The biggest litmus test for us is, does the end user, the super, the PM, the APM, the PX, does the end user like this? Do they think it's worth it?
Exactly.
And that trumps any ROI calculation you can back solve.
Absolutely.
There's something to be said for just the fact that people use it. Let's throw that out there, right? Like, even if it doesn't deliver dollars to the bottom line, sometimes the downstream effects of actually having people use a system, and maybe it's collecting data for you for something you can do later. I mean, this was one of the biggest things that I found was we went from a system that we couldn't get people to use to something that they were using every day happily. And even though the time savings was there, it wasn't really the main measurement. The bigger measurement was all the data, all the information, what we could do with that, and the downstream effects of having somebody use that innovation or that technology that made such a huge difference for us. Well, thank you.
Sorry, I was just going to add, if it positively impacts your process, it's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to say thank you to all of you for joining us on today's panel, and really appreciate you being here and sharing your insights. I want to say thank you to the audience for joining us for today's session. Hopefully you got some really great things out of it. Please feel free to follow up with any of us after the panel. We're just about at time right now. So Once again, thanks everybody for joining us. Go back to your companies, continue to drive that culture of innovation and entrepreneurship inside of your companies. It will only improve the work that you do and the value that you can deliver to your clients as well. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.